Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Merl Mayer. In this video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to shorten this drive shaft, but the more important thing is I want to show you why we do what we do when we're shortening a drive shaft. It's kind of strange that I have to do this drive shaft, but people make mistakes. This drive shaft was just built because someone did a transmission swap in the vehicle that I'm working on, but they obviously gave the drive shaft shop that has all the equipment to do this and everything the wrong measurements. So I'm going to have to shorten it, and I normally do not do this. It's not something that I want to practice. Excuse me. What I want, or why I'm doing it, is because when this vehicle gets turned up, we're going to be replacing the shaft. So for right now, even though it's not right, hopefully we can get him on the road. Now, the whole point of the video is actually, if someone is doing this, which people do it all the time, and there is ways of manually balancing it and so on. If someone does it, the important thing about this is knowing about phasing. So let me get into that. All right, I've just thrown some levels on to see basically. I know that in the drive shaft shop, they would have done this with angle finders more accurately, but just throwing a couple welders levels on, this thing looks like it is dead on. So what we're looking at here is, what I want to pay attention to is, this is the input shaft, and I'm going to put a graphic up after I'm done explaining this. But if I rotate this, what actually happens if I keep my hand in the same spot, my drive shaft, okay, that didn't work too good because I can't do it all at once. But anyway, what happens, I'll explain it, is I have a plane going through here and a plane going through here. So there's two separate planes. And if I turn this and my hand doesn't move, which it will, what happens, because it's going through two different planes, every 90 degrees of this shaft, the output part of this speeds up and slows down because we have two planes rotating and fighting each other. So this drive shaft goes through rapid speed changes compared to this very smooth input speed. So this is very important to have the phasing correct, because if I had this drive shaft and that end of the drive shaft 45 degrees out, we would have a very bumpy ride. So even though this shaft could be balanced, it would not be smooth because of speed changes. Now, let me just give a reference for anyone who has had experience, and please have input with this with talking about the drive shaft in front of a four-wheel drive vehicle. So in the front of a four-wheel drive, the older stuff with the U-joints in the front end, and Dodge used this, I mean, other manufacturers probably did for years and years, even after CV joints came out. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But when you were talking about a four-wheel drive front axle, it has one U-joint, and that is on the knuckle side, because the shaft going into the differential just goes straight into splines. So if anyone has experience with driving a four-wheel drive with a U-joint in the front, and you have it in four-wheel drive, well, when you turn sharp, the sharper you turn, that vehicle actually kind of hops around the corner. And that feeling of the hop around the corner is actually because the wheel speed is speeding up and slowing down as you're turning around. The sharper you go, the worse it is. And so that would be the same thing on this drive shaft. And for those of you that don't understand what I meant about splines going into a four-wheel drive differential, well, this is a yoke on the drive shaft itself, and it has splines inside. So the reason for splines is I can have two shafts or two members that are very strong because they lock together and they can slide in and out of this. So This right here is the female portion. So this would be exactly what's on the side gears in the differential in the front of a four-wheel drive. And on here, the drive shaft or the output shaft of the transmission goes into here. And what that allows is there's a seal on the outside that keeps this sealed. And on the inside, that shaft turns, and this turns at the exact same speed, and it's all sealed with oil. So we can have movement with this as well as a lot of strength here. This is a U-joint front end, and again, I mentioned a CV joint. Well, that's a more modern joint. They use it on drive shafts and all over the place on new four-wheel drives. And I'll throw a graphic up there of what it is. And basically, it's a set of ramps with balls in between that kind of act similar to a spline. And with a CV joint, there is no RPM change between input and output shaft. So what we mean about phasing in a drive shaft is that end is completely level, this end is completely level, and we want to make sure that these planes are dead level, because if I have an angle on that end, I need the equal angle on this end so that the speed difference in this shaft gets evened out on the output side of this. So what happens there is the input shaft turns at a smooth speed, the drive shaft speeds up and slows down, and then the angle coming off of this end needs to match that angle, because then the speed changes here turn into an equal output. And that's how drive shaft works with U-joints. It's a really neat technology. It works good, but this is why you have to have your driveline angles correct. Otherwise, you're going to have a serious vibration. So we're going to focus on keeping this in phase. Okay, so what I've done here is I am ensuring that I can get it in phase. Now, what I did is I took and I ground off the weld, which this is going to affect our balance because I touched this a little bit, which is going to change balance. The weld is not even, so that's going to affect balance. And this side here, the weight is kind of in the way. So is it going to be perfect? No, but here's what we worry about with this. Like realistically, when the shaft's done, it should go out to be balanced. But I have enough room where this is level on here now, and I want to make sure that this shaft lines up this end with this, because I'm going to be grinding this weld off, knocking this end out, and I need to make sure it's straight. So if I take an awl and I scribe a line on here, well, I can cut out my 5/8 of an inch, which I'm going to need, which is probably closer to there or less. I can line this up perfectly with these lines. I'm going to have 4 lines on here, and I'm going to actually center punch them as well to make sure that this thing lines up properly. So that's number 1 step. Grind the weld off so that this will sit flat on here. Get it all scribed so that when we cut our piece out, we can line these lines up and they'll still line up. Yeah, and center punch it. I have to have a very accurate, really precise circle drawn around this that is dead straight. Normally what you would use is a wraparound. So welders usually have lots of these. I have lots, but unfortunately I am limited on space here. So what I did is I took some templating cardboard and I took a straight edge and I cut the factory edge, and I just built this little wraparound. So how a wraparound works is you wrap this around and you want 2 complete wraps on it. And if you have the edges lined up dead straight on here, this will be a proper good straight line. So with 2 wraps, what you want to do is you want to make sure you're nice and tight on the piece of pipe, shaft, whatever you're trying to put a circ on. You line up the edges. You make sure it's dead straight all the way around. And if these all line up perfectly, you will have a dead straight circ on this that we can use as a perfect measurement. All I have to do, mark this now. And I'm building myself what you would call a reference line or a datum line, so that I have something that is going to be very accurate to take measurements off of. And again, I'm just using an awl to scribe this. All right, I have my datum set. I have a perfectly scratched in scribed line, and it is perfectly round. All right, I'll get it measured out and we'll show you that. Okay, next thing I've done is I took and I used a divider to mark a line here, and you can see I have one here. This is how much I'm taking out. I'm gonna take out a little bit extra because I'm okay if I weld with a bit of a gap. But this is the most important measure here. I have center punch marks, okay? And those center punch marks, I did 4 of them on here. And I was very careful in making sure the center punch marks were correct. I had to erase one there. And now if I take a caliper and I go from this line to these center punch marks, which I've reset my caliper for other stuff, but anyway, to the center punch marks, it measures exactly 4 5/8. I'm pulling 5/8 of an inch out. And so when this gets slipped back together, I can measure from my center punch marks to the edge of this line, and that should measure exactly 4 inches, and we'll be good to go. All right, I just darkened them in so I can see it. I'm just gonna zip this apart and we'll look at it in a second. So this thing here has a big taper on it. I've cleaned it up so that I can get a good deep weld in, and I'm gonna drive it home, get it into the end of the shaft and take my measurements. Just getting my lines lined up. I got it just tapped in just to start. And these are tapered. So I'm lining up my awl lines and my center punch marks right now. And this is tapered, so it's actually going to expand this a little bit. So I definitely want to get on my measurements. Make sure there's a reason I have 4 measurements, is because this is tapered and it can be uneven. So this side is in further than that side. See, I might have went too far. Nope. No, we're looking pretty good. Almost. This side came out now. Ooh, very close. It's extremely even all the way around right now. Extremely even. So that last set of hits didn't go in at all so far. But it is extremely, going in extremely even, which is the normal case. Okay, that I can see went crooked. Yep. So this is why I want multiple measurements. Deadly. So I'm going to clean this edge up so I have somewhere nice to weld. I'll bevel it a bit out more, and then we're gonna throw a weld in there. So I'll get it cleaned up, and I'll recheck measurements after it's cleaned up, and get it tacked in and weld it out. But all of the lines deadly straight on all the awl marks, and I like saying all the awl. Anyway, it is beveled out and tacked up, and it is ready to weld out. It's welded out. It's really hot. I've double checked all the measurements, so from the middle of the center punch mark, and you can kind of still see the scribes of where it was on either end. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on there. To the inside of this line is exactly 4 inches. All of them are measuring perfect. If you see, here's another little center punch mark, and the awl line is definitely lined up to all these marks. So we have a drive shaft now that is welded out, and it is in phase. All right, we are dead level side to side the same way this was. I can guarantee that. We are 5/8 of an inch shorter. I don't know where the piece is, but it's fine. And should this thing go and get balanced? Yes. But when this is turned up, this is going to be a bigger yoke. They'll have to change that yoke. So this shaft will go in the garbage. So we're just saving him a few bucks to get this thing on the road. When he can afford to turn it up, this is getting a new shaft. If it vibrates, we'll have to pull it off and send it in to get balanced. But I am really hoping that I have helped you get the concept of the differences in speeds and kind of the process that I do if I'm doing a quick shorten of a drive shaft. We might do something like this if we're doing a swap or whatever, send it out to get balanced later. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about this, please throw them in the comments, and like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.